Welcome everyone to Into the WHONIVERSE, a little mini-sode series, part of the Real Podcasters, where we're going to be discussing everything to do with Doctor Who. And when I say everything, I do quite literally mean everything in this instance. My name is Regan as ever, and I'm joined once again by my beloved co-host for the next 700 serials. It's Dan.
You know, when you put it like that, it just seems that it ain't worth it.
Exactly, like how many serials into the 700 before we think, you know what, let's just talk about something else.
I was about to say, like, how long before we just say, yeah, no, hi everybody.
Hello. So this is something that we've thought about doing for quite a while in a variety of forms. If you've been following the podcast for a little while, you'll know that we have been covering every single series of the revived era, so from 2005 to 2022. But one thing we always said we wanted to do was cover the classic series of Doctor Who. It's quite difficult because there is quite a lot. There's like 27 years worth of episodes, some of which you can actually view.
Yeah, and some just don't really exist, really. There's only like very salvageable parts of them at best.
Yeah, there's a couple that aren't there, which we will address in any way that we can, but we're keeping this as a mini-sode series because there's so many, and I don't know how much we'd have to actually say on all of them. I don't think they'd warrant like a 1 hour episode. That being said, we are obviously going to kick things off with the one that started it all, An Unearthly Child, written by Anthony Coburn, directed by Waris Hussein, and broadcast on the 23rd of November 1963. Otherwise known as the 60th anniversary of when this is actually going out. So happy birthday, Doctor Who. Well done on kind of getting it to 60 years. I'm saying kind of because he got cancelled twice. Technically 3 times. There's a few of those. But yeah, so talking about the opening episode, this is the very first serial from the very first season of Doctor Who, which went from 1963 to 1964. We have some stuff to say on it, obviously, considering it's 60 years on. Does this actually still hold up? I don't think it's much of a stretch to say that this doesn't really work as well as some people might. Like, I know there's going to be some people that'll be like, oh, this is like an absolute masterpiece. It's one of the greatest moments in Doctor Who history. No, the first 25 minutes are. It's the other 50 to 75 minutes that are the issue, unfortunately. I don't love this story at all. I am curious as to your thoughts, Dan.
Look, I totally get why some people think this is like a classic episode, you know, because it was the first Doctor Who episode of all time, so in a way that does already have some iconicness. However, it's not very good. The first 25 minutes, as you say, that's probably all you need. Like that first episode is fine. Everything else is just like, well, it's an episode. Episodes.
It was.
Yeah, how many episodes? I think it's like 4 episodes or something like that, isn't it?
4, yeah.
Yeah, the other like 3 are just, well, pretty boring. Not gonna lie. I thought the episode after, which we'll no doubtly cover at a later date, was just miles better, even though it was ridiculously long. But nah, it's not the grandest of Doctor Who stories. I mean, yeah, it's definitely special in terms of being iconic, but nah, it's not a favourite by any means necessary. It's very shoddy, but then again, you know, this is like 1963-4 era, so, you know, I can't really be too cynical there, because, you know, it's technology at the time, really. But,
yeah, I think for me,
my opinion on it.
Yeah, I think for me, it's... I mean, it's well documented that this wasn't necessarily going to be the first episode that they were actually going to do. Of course, they'd have, like, the first 25 minutes. That was always going to be the case, but it was a question of what story was going to appear from episode 2. I think, even for some people, the way that the broadcast dates were, people assumed that the Daleks was actually the first story, which now BBC iPlayer has them all. It kind of lists it as the Daleks, but, you know, whatever. But it's interesting how the only script they had available was the Tribe of Gum, the Stone Age stuff, and they're like, oh, okay, fine, we'll put it in. And it kind of works as like a way to bring these characters together. But as I say, all the good stuff and the stuff that you remember. And bear in mind, I watched this thing yesterday. I just rewatched it for the first time in about a year. There's not a lot that's memorable outside of that first episode.
The only other side to it that's memorable outside of that first sort of episode is literally just proof that the TARDIS can go back in time and it goes back to the Stone Age. That's about it. Mm-hmm. Everything else is just... I mean, there's some cavemen and there's some selfish Doctor Who, just, you know. But, nah, it's pretty forgettable, in honesty.
Well, I suppose most of this review will encompass that first 25 minutes, because that's where all, as I say, that's where all the good stuff is.
That's where all the magic happens.
Yeah, exactly, which is ironic given the fact that episode 2, 3, and 4 has all the time travel in it.
Yeah.
But, you know, hey-ho. So, of course, we're introduced to William Hartnell, technically for the second time, first time actually broadcast, if you count the pilot that never went to air. It was actually first shown on the TV, I think, in the 90s, and mostly just for fun, really, not like they were going to say, oh yeah, this version's better. No, it's not. It just isn't. So yeah, we are introduced to William Hartnell for the first time as the first Doctor. It's interesting now, because I mean, I'm on to season 2 of his era so far. You've already finished it as of when we're recording this, because, you know, illness and free time really helps you out. I do legitimately like Hartnell as the Doctor, even this early on in his time as the character. I do like how abrasive and kind of manipulative he is. We kind of see that in the 7th Doctor, like 20 years later. But it's quite refreshing to see technically his origins here, how he just doesn't give a damn for humans at all. In fact, is quite prepared to kidnap them to make sure that he's not going to get his ass kicked.
Oh yeah, totally. He just basically takes like Barbara and Ian so he can just, you know, basically not have to worry about them going to the local authorities. Oh yeah, there's a crazy man with a time-travelling police box.
I mean, of course, it's 1963. Everyone would obviously believe that. Even the police were like, oh, really? Oh, okay, excellent. And let's go and catch the sod.
Let's go and catch the bugger.
Which is funny, considering the very first shot has a policeman just having a nosy around a little old Totter's lane.
Just doing his patrol.
I'm pretty sure there was actually some sort of story that was actually supposed to be explaining what the policeman was doing there, and I'm sat there thinking, why have we got a story discussing that? That seems
why do we have a
pointless.
Story for the already well-established fact that he's just patrolling? We don't need like anything other than that.
Yeah, I mean, like, he's just doing his job. It's absolutely fine. But yeah, as I say, we're introduced to William Hartnell as the first Doctor, or the Doctor, however we're going to look at it now, or Doctor Who, as he's listed in the credits, which I hate. I hate that so much.
Yeah, I think even like finishing off the Hartnell era, he's still credited as Doctor Who.
Well, even Eccleston is listed as Doctor Who when like they do series 1 in 2005, and then there's Tennant and Roxman's like, excuse me, do not call me Doctor Who in the credits. He's called the Doctor, and he just has like a proper fanboy moment, like, stop calling me that. That is not my name. And I agree, that isn't his name, unless it's the Peter Cushing movies, which that would be just a hilarious thing to bloody talk about.
I love how it's not like spelled like DOCTOR. It's just spelled DDR, like Doctor Who. Uh-huh. Like, I'm like, wow.
Yeah, the shorthand version.
Yeah, the really shorthand version.
Yeah, I've never understood why, to be honest, especially considering that the opening titles did not have it as the shorthand version. I've never got it, frankly. But of course, we've also got Ian and Barbara, who were also introduced here, played by William Russell and Jacqueline Wright. Very well, I've got to say. I mean, these characters improve naturally as time goes on, but if we're just going to look at this story exclusively, I'd say of the two, I'd say Barbara is the more interesting one. Ian is just borderline annoying, quite frankly.
Yeah, I'd probably say that, to be honest, because Ian's just... He's kind of like that annoying skeptic. He's like, you know, you're absolutely BSing me with this whole time-travelling police box.
That being said, though, that is a nice change of pace, because I think one would assume that when Doctor Who started in the 60s, that technically the leading man outside of the Doctor would just be the courageous and brave one. In this case, he's just a wuss, frankly. I think
He's just a wuss.
that's actually quite different, to be honest. And as I say, Barbara is certainly the stronger character and ends up becoming one of the stronger characters as the show goes on.
Yeah.
Susan, though, I'm going to try really hard not to end up regurgitating this every single serial, because I don't think it covers every single one. But it's clear that when Carole Ann Ford came on to play the role, I think she was hoping for something a little bit more than what they give her, especially in this, in that they give her next to nothing to work with beyond screaming, unfortunately.
Screaming and getting kidnapped.
Screaming and getting kidnapped. Very stereotypical of the time, I guess. It's a shame, though, because I do like Carole Ann Ford quite a bit as the character.
Episodes where she's a bit more likable.
Mm-hmm. And not to like suddenly delve into her final story, well, technically final, the one when she leaves. It's not really until then that she actually really comes into her own, which is a bit of a shame. I mean, there's certainly some good moments with her as a character, but overall, she's easily the weakest of the four, I'd say. And as I say, the stuff that I like, the TARDIS set is absolutely brilliant. I still love it, even if it is just falling to pieces, because it's 1963, of course it is. And I am very curious in a couple of days. Actually, no, the day when this goes out is when the colorization of the Daleks is going to be on the TV. And I am very curious to see what that looks like with all this blue and vibrancy.
Yeah, I can't either.
It's going to be very, very interesting as well, I think.
Yeah.
But it just works as like this proper otherworldly world, kind of. I mean, it kind of goes back to when we were discussing An Adventure in Space and Time on the main part of the podcast, where that docudrama really illustrated how different Doctor Who is to everything else. And this, just in these 25 minutes, it absolutely sells it as something that you just have not seen before. I mean, as I say,
like, you're speaking of like iconicness, you've got the whole police box phenomena, that it's bigger on the inside than it is outside, and this is like being the recurring sort of joke of it, really, that people are just like absolutely stunned when they walk in. This has been a thing of like, from the 60s onwards, like till now, to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, if you get new companions and stuff like that, we're no doubt going to have the same thing with like it's bigger on the inside. How is this possible?
Yeah, one day I'd just like to find someone who just like rocks up and is just like,
they just act totally normal. But no, I really like the set, and I think seeing that on television for the first time must have been like, wow, this looks, I mean, as you say, it's so different compared to everything else.
Even the exterior of the TARDIS, I think, is actually still one of my personal favourites, even to this day. And trust me, we've seen like a lot of different versions of it, and I don't know what it is with it that I like so much. I think it's just because it just looks so battered and broken and looks clearly nicked, which makes sense given how they retroactively show that, oh yeah, the Doctor actually nicked it, which just feels like a classic thing to do. Just like, should I buy it? Nah, I'll be fine. But even just, I think it's because of that final shot at the end of episode 1, with it just sort of like, perched in the ground, and there's just the shadow of the caveman rocking up as like a cliffhanger final shot. I think that's absolutely spectacular, frankly. It still works, even though the rest of the serial doesn't really follow suit. I mean, I know people have said this to death when it comes to the depiction of the cave people in this. I'm like, yeah, of course there's going to be issues by today's standards. It's 60 years ago. That doesn't really bother me. I think my issues is mostly just down to technical more than anything else. It's just the pacing.
It comes down to more
absolutely slugs.
More down the pace, and a lot of those like history era ones have that issue because they're just so boring, and especially when they're just stretched over 25 minutes each, and some of them just end in the most like, particularly like when you get to the middle, say if there's like 4 parts, you get to those like middle 2 parts and they just end with like the most silly of cliffhanger, and then you go into the next one and I'm like, wow, this just did not need to be an episode. It's like you're just in a cave. You spent 20 odd minutes in a cave plotting how you're going to get out of the cave.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this serial, more than anything else, absolutely illustrates like the highs and lows of Doctor Who. You've got the whimsical nature, you've got the science fiction technical jargon and all that sort of stuff. You've got the really interesting companions, the lead character, the music as well. But then you've also got the really sluggish pacing and the padding out of the runtime, especially if there's too many serials. Like, at the point of when we're recording this, I'll be going on to Marco Polo. I'm starting to listen to that one. That's 7 parts.
Bloody hell.
And even in terms of like the main show itself, I've just watched The Rescue last night, and then I'll be going on to the Romans after that. I think that's 6 parts. It's by no means the longest ones that we've seen, but even when you look on even Letterboxd, it's like 175 minutes, and you're like, what the hell is this?
Yeah, it's baffling. It really is.
I mean, this one, gratefully, is not nearly as egregious in terms of the runtime. That's, reserved for the next story. But it could have easily been a lot shorter, I think. Even
you
like,
could have
2 or
easily
3
sliced
episodes.
out like 2 of those segments in the serial, and it would have been fine.
Well, that's the thing, because I think even when watching The Rescue or Edge of Destruction, those are 2 parts, and so that's 50 minutes. That's just like a regular episode of the show now.
Yeah.
That would have worked absolutely fine. I can see plenty of places to cut things in An Unearthly Child to make it just a little bit shorter. And I think it's safe to say that if there wasn't any rights issues with this, I can guarantee that the BBC were planning on colorizing this story and shortening it, similar to what they're doing with the Daleks, making it 75 minutes instead of, Christ, was it 150 minutes or something?
Yeah, it's something
rubbish.
like that. It's just around 3 hours and a bit, something like that. It's ridiculous.
3 hours. 3 hours of Daleks is absolutely fine, but not 3 hours, but not like 2.5 hours worth of just cave watching.
Yeah.
That's not the most interesting thing on the planet, unfortunately.
Yeah, kind of like this episode when you just have like I swear that like one of the segments of that this particular episode is just them, the Doctor and the companions, just in a cave, just plotting to get out of the cave, and the last like 5 minutes is them escaping the cave. I'm like, really? I mean, yeah, like the set is impressive, but come on, let's do something here.
Exactly, and the thing is, though, just to cap this off, I actually, while we do criticise the pacing and how fairly mediocre and middling this story is, I actually appreciate the fact that this isn't brilliant, because I think it would be very difficult for this show to try and replicate that success again, and I would honestly argue that I don't think it would have lasted as long as it did if its very first story was one of the best. I don't think, personally. That could just be me. That could just be my warped
it's
sort of mindset on this.
This is still an important episode because, again, as mentioned, this is like the first ever Doctor Who episode, so it's got to be. It already has those hooks in, but it's by no means the best ever story. I mean, yeah, there are people who absolutely love this. Me, yeah, I think it's a fairly passable one, but I think that of like a lot of the history ones, even in like the revived stuff, like I'm not really too fussed about them. Depending.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm certainly not going to diminish the importance of this one, because if this one didn't work at full stop, then yeah, it wouldn't be here.
Yeah, you just wouldn't have Doctor
at
Who.
all. Yeah, exactly, and it very nearly didn't, considering that the pilot was received so poorly by Sidney Newman. He's just like, no, just burn it, just blow it up, just
burn it,
just destroy everything and just start again. But even when I was reviewing the Edge of Destruction last year on Letterboxd, I think I actually labelled both this, the Daleks, and Edge of Destruction as the most important episodes of Doctor Who, full stop, which we will get to eventually. Yeah, so I think that covers our thoughts on An Unearthly Child. As I say, we're not big on this one, but as I say, it was kind of impossible for this one to still really work as well as it does, and if anything, it's certainly one of the more middling ones, especially looking at my ranking for Classic Who so far. It's I think it's like right in the middle. Like, I've seen way
I'd say
worse.
it's just one of those like middle episodes. It's not absolutely brilliant, but it's not absolute garbage either.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, as I say, that covers an unearthly child. Again with the stammer, again with the title. I'm really glad we don't have to discuss it again. So thank you very much for listening to our very first mini-sode for Into the WHONIVERSE. As mentioned before, we did cover an adventure in space and time very recently, so be sure to check that one out on our channel. There'll be links in the description below. Happy birthday, Doctor Who, as well. Congratulations on getting to 60. You're looking thoroughly excellent for 60 years old. In fact, you're looking like a Scotsman who's already played this character before for some reason. I wonder why. But anyway, as I say, thank you very much for listening. As I say, we will be back to discuss the Daleks at some point after we've seen, I think, the colorization version, just to sort of do a bit of a comparison. Compare and contrast, of which there will be a lot, because one of them's in colour and the other's in black and white with really awkward shadows and plastic Daleks in the background. Is it that one, or is it a different one?
No, it's definitely that one. There's cardboard cutouts of Daleks.
I just love that shot.
Well, to be honest, Dalek Invasion of Earth has cutouts in it as well, but not as much as this one.
I watched that yesterday. I can definitely attest to that one. But yes, you can look forward to that very, very soon. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you next time. And until then, it's goodbye from Dan.
Goodbye.
And it's goodbye from me. Goodbye.